Well, good morning and welcome to Zen Live on this beautiful Sunday here in Blackstone, the center of the world. But then you too are at the center of the world. You are the world and the world is you. And so I venture into this talk with a new stimulation. Well, I have like front porch revelations. So in the morning I go out on the front porch. And I'm currently reading the books by Joseph Chilton Pearce. This one I just cracked. He became noteworthy on writing The Crack in the Cosmic Egg. And this was written in the 80s. And so I'm currently cracking this open. And he basically cracks me open. And that's what, we should find these teachers. We should find these cracks in the cosmic egg that lets in light. And then when we find a teacher, a writer, we should read everything they wrote and then read everything that inspired them. So that way we, as Joseph Campbell said, we follow our bliss. We're on the scent of truth. We're thirsty for God. We're thirsty for truth. And it said that actually Jesus says if you're thirsty for God, God will come. If you're thirsty for the river will come. So the question is, how do we crack that egg? How do we get grace to pour in? How do we get insight? How do we get creativity? How do we get understanding? How do we get peace? So we run around trying to find a crack in the egg, and we can't do it. The egg seals itself back up. Bang, 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 bang. Maybe get a little hole there, and the egg seals itself back up. And I've been talking about this egg then as culture. Culture is, and I've been reading in, I forgot to turn my clock on. Okay, there we go. And so, I've been reading in here the biology of transcendence. Pearce is a master at talking about biology of the brain and the structure of brain and science and quantum physics, but he puts it into a mystical context. He puts it into a Buddhist context. And as a matter of fact, the reason I became acquainted with him was that I saw him at the ashram of Swami Muktananda. And he was a follower of Muktananda because Muktananda cracked his egg open as he cracked mine open. And so Pearce had been writing and began to write more books. He was a writer and a lecturer. But he always refers back to his meditation teacher. And I went to see Pearce once. He's dead now. He died a few years ago. He lived up in Nelson County, right next to a famous heart-mind institute that did a lot of research on the heart and the energy field of the heart. But anyway, I went up to see him. I remember that. And so now I've picked up his books again. And this is an interesting thing, when you have these books and maybe you read them, these teachers maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago, and then you pick them up again, and wow, it's like a brave new world. It's like fresh insight. I had no idea of the depth in this teacher, but actually it's your own depth. When you go back to an old teacher and you suddenly see new worlds and new depth, you see, it's you that has the new depth. It was always there, but now you have opened up. So that's a really great way to, when you go back to your home tree where you grew up, you'll see little markings on the wall where your mother measured your growth. Okay, well here you are down there, and usually, I remember, that usually it's the kitchen door that will be like the rings of a tree. Right? And you will be when you were a child, and then so forth. And then, now you're grown up, you see. So it's kind of like a dipstick, you see. So these teachings, if you're thirsty, my friend, if you're thirsty, these teachings will be like the marks on the kitchen door, that as you go back to them again and again, you will see how much you've grown since the last time you visited them. So that's a very interesting thing. At least that's my experience, and I'm sure it's your experience too. So today I wanted to talk about, and this has always rung in my mind like a bell tower, the Son of Man has no place to rest his head. And I think if I were to try to sum up my life and my thirst has been to bring together the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of the Buddha, the East and the West. These two great cultures are like a yin and a yang, and neither one of them has the complete truth. So there has to be a creative synthesis of the two to explode into your true freedom. It's like you can't, if you choose one, the other one is yearning. If you choose that, the other. You can't, they are the old woman and the young woman in this Gestalt picture. The young woman and the old woman. Jesus and Buddha. Each are mutually dependent. Their teachings is mutually dependent. Their teachings, but you don't see that unless you make the leap that transcends the opposites. So let's look at this. The Son of Man has no place to rest his head. Now, Jesus never called himself the Son of God. He said I'm the Son of Man. And that's helpful if we stay with that, because if you say he's the Son of God, then he's a God, and then what he does, I can't do. He's a God. I'm just a poor mortal, you see. Well, you miss the teaching. You miss the application of the teaching. You miss the freedom. You're just, you're just worshiping a unattainable goal, you see. And that's like the cardinal heresy in Christianity, is to think that you're Jesus. Well, who do you think you are? Jesus Christ? You see? Well, there's a flaw in that, so let's look into it. So when the Son of Man has no place to rest his head, that is the same thing as the Heart Sutra in Zen. Now, the Heart Sutra in Zen is the core teaching of Zen Buddhism, and Zen Buddhism is kind of like plain yogurt. All the other Buddhist, Southeast Asia, Tibetan Buddhist, all the Ceylon, all of the different flavors of Buddhism, you get to Zen, it's just plain Zen. That's why I like Zen. It's plain yogurt. No flavors added. It's just down to the point, just down to the eureka, just down to the satori, just down to the prajna. Prajna is the wisdom mind, you could say in English, that the aroused mind that does not rest on form, which is the same thing as the Son of Man has no place to rest his head. Buddhism is much more descriptive and psychological in that it talks about mind, whereas Christianity, with the teachings of Jesus, tells the same story in people stories. See, Son of Man is a person. It looks like a son of man. It looks like a person to me. You see, so the teachings of Jesus is done in parables, analogy, metaphors that are abstractions made human. But Buddhism stays more towards the abstract, except in Zen. And so you get this dialogue between the master and the disciple. So the teachings in Zen is all done through a dialogue between the master and the disciple. And the same with with Buddhism, in the sense that when you read the sutras of Buddha, it's all dialogue. He's talking to people. It's kind of like Krishnamurti sitting under a tree. You ask him a question, and he responds. Ask a question, and you get an answer. Now that right there, you see, that right there is the key. Now, if you go to a master, or if you go to a guru, or if you go to anybody, who has tapped into the field of potential, you have to ask them a question to stimulate their response. I know myself, not that I'm equating myself with that, I know myself that on Facebook, when somebody asks a question, there's a response stimulus, and the answer just flows, just like I turn a hose on it and just fill them up. I get, and so a lot of people, I'm sure I overload people because they may come, and I had a friend of mine that did that. His name was Charlie Mauser. And he would come to visit, and I would have a question about the size that was about the size of a teacup, and he would pour a bucket on me. Whoa! I just wanted the teacup full, and I got this bucket. I'm overloaded, and so I'm sure I overload people. But the point is that when you ask, it'll be given. So when you're thirsty, you'll get a drink. And ideally, you're only going to get a drink as much as you can hold. In other words, that's what, so that if you go to a true master, he's only going to give you enough that you can hold. He's not going to dump the whole, he's not going to dump the Niagara Falls on you. See, and this is where I need to check I'm just looking at that in myself right now and confessing to you that people ask for a stream, and I'll give them Niagara Falls. And of course it doesn't make any sense then because they're overloaded. But anyway, not this. But the point I want to make here is that these two are the same statement, that the Son of Man, now this is where the understanding, my liberation in understanding Jesus, is that Jesus is a teaching, not a person, not a God, not a human. Buddhism is a teaching, a dharma, not a person, not a God. Although there is a person in both Jesus and Buddhism, there is a historical person, a historical location. You say, well, that was in northern India, and Jesus was in the Middle East there in Jerusalem, and so these are located in time and place, but the teaching is a fountain. And so if we look at the teaching as being his teaching, then we're closed to it. We can't make it my teaching. It can't open us up. So how do I open up, you see? Well, je suis the Son of Man. In other words, when the boundary or the separation between you and Jesus is gone, then the teaching of Jesus opens up in you. But it's not a teaching of the past. It's not a biblical teaching. It's a creative function. Now here's where people, and I know I spent my whole life working with this, trying to understand this, trying to activate this. See, here's a credit card. You get a new credit card. Oh wow, I got power. How much? Oh, I got $20,000 in credit. Credit power. Oh, but can I use it? No, you have to activate it. Oh, so I got to call in and activate the power. All right, so that's an analogy. So Christ teaching and Buddha teaching is power, but you have to activate it. How do you activate it? Well, first of all, you have to do something. I can't just believe in the power of the credit card. It won't work. I have to activate it. I have to do something. And that is on faith, because I have faith that when I call in, it'll activate. So when you call in the teaching, when you call down the teaching, that requires faith. But faith in what? In nothing. No form. Get the idea? Rest his head does not rest on form. All right, this is more rest his head, stays in the context of you're thinking about a person. And this is a good way to think about it. It's a metaphor, though, for an abstraction that is very real in us. It brings the abstraction down to me, you see. The teaching is a field of potential. This is something I've been Pierce has been helping me at, is the field. Field, wave. But even a wave is not good, so I won't use that. A field is a field of potential that only exists when you activate it. Now he talks about these what are called idiot savants. Now an idiot savant is, I'm checking with my time, but an idiot savant, and there's so many records of this, is a person who cannot tie their shoes. They're dysfunctional totally. They don't know, they can't compute, they can't talk. Maybe a little talk, but they can't do anything. They can't take care of themselves. But because of their simplicity, many of them have tapped into a particular field of knowledge. It might be mathematics. It might be calendar days. It might be automobiles. In other words, when an idiot savant, and an idiot is he uses the term because it means a person who is not like the Rain Man, but I mean is totally dysfunctional, except when they're asked a question in their field, they are phenomenal. They cannot be explained. Particularly in mathematics or any field. I said automobiles. He mentions automobiles. That asked a question, they can name every automobile. Well, let me just see if I can find that spot here. A mathematical savant. That's a good one. For instance, a mathematical savant was shown a checkerboard with its 64 squares and was asked how many grains of rice would we have on the final square if we started with a single grain at the top left corner and doubled them on each square. The answer is 2 to the 64th power, or 18 quintillion, and lots of quadrillion, trillions, billions, and so on, which my computer can't fill in. The number looks like this: 18 20 digits long. It took the savant 45 seconds to spell out that figure, which he did numeral by numeral. And such savants are unaware of any computation of their own going on. The field is an intelligent action responding to stimulus, and the savant is simply an innocent bystander in the process. The answer arrives in complete digital linear form, and in giving it the savant spell out each digit. A geographical savant was found who could rattle off the names of hundreds of mountain ranges, the rivers associated with each, their precise longitude and latitude and location in relation to other ranges, and so on, but only if asked to do so. Okay, you get the idea? Ask and you will receive. Well, the idiot savant, this savant, is an example of somebody who, in their simplicity, in other words, their brain only taps into their field, and there is no mind or consciousness there to doubt it. There's nobody there to say, oh, you can't do that. Or maybe you're wrong. See? So it's automatic. So the idea I'm trying to share here is that the field of potential is a knowledge field. So there's all kinds of knowledge fields out there, and all of us tap into them. Some of us might tap into music. or biology, or pop culture, or art, or whatever. There's fields of knowledge out there, but it's kind of like the credit card, power. It doesn't exist unless you call it in. The field doesn't exist out there as something. It's there as potential. And of course, it's built up by people adding to it and interacting with the knowledge base. So our knowledge today of computers is a field built up by human interaction with it. But it's there. And that's why many examples are two scientists discovering the same invention, but they're across the world from each other and they have no contact. The field is ready for that. So anyone can, it's kind of like lightning, it's kind of like clouds full of electricity and its saturation point. At some point, some guy with an umbrella, a golf club, or a tree is going to get hit because the field is saturated and it's ready to unload. So science, these fields unload their new ideas, their new inventions, their new advancements when there's a saturation point in the field and somebody sticks an umbrella up. Whoa, Eureka, I found it. See? But the person who sticks the head up is not resting their head on any form. It's empty. So the scientist who makes the great invention, it's all recorded. That Eureka moment always comes when they have no place to rest their head, when they give up, when you can't find the car keys. So I'll repeat my mother's story to end here. So she couldn't find the car keys. She was 100, by the way, and still drove her car. And she was just going around in circles in the house. She says, I'm going to have a stroke. Because I know they're here, but I can't find. She searched for them for 5 days. So next day I came back, she was happy. She said, what happened? Well, I just gave it up. I just no longer rested my head. I'm paraphrasing. I no longer rested my head on the idea that I can find the car keys. That was form, on the idea that I can find the car keys. I gave it up. I just gave it to God, and the next thing I knew, my body, I didn't know where I was going. I found myself going into the bedroom, and I stuck my hand in the sweater pocket, and there were the keys. So that's just, to me, that's just a perfect little metaphor of the Christ and the Buddha function. When you give up resting your head on the known, this means the known, right? When you give up resting your head on the known, now the known includes me. See, we all think we're the known. I know who I am. You know, our personality, I got all the profile. You see, all this is the known. It's form. It's known. And I rest my head on it. But if I want to activate the Christ-Buddha function, I'll say Christ-Buddha function, I have to surrender that. I have to just give it up. I have to quit. I have to say, I can't do it. I see the tape loop. I see the irony of the tape loop. I see the irony of the snake eating its own tail. I see the irony, you see. That's what irony is. It's turning back on itself. When I see that, there's laughter or the eureka moment. I see what the answer is. It came to me out of the blue. It had never existed before. And now all I got to do is translate it into language, into form. So, we tap into the field like a savant. But we have to be thirsty. And we have to know how to surrender. So, anyway, thank you for hanging in with me this morning. I'll see you this evening.